As a wise man once said, if you wear a dress and have an animal sidekick, you're a princess. While we can neither confirm nor deny this claim, it is true that animal companions have been a staple of Disney movies since the beginning. And with them being as prevalent as they are, we have to ask, how do these furry friends stack up in terms of morality? Which of these animals is man's best friend and which need obedience training? Hey guys, I'm Brad with Wicked Binge, and this is Disney Animal Companions, good to most good. But before we begin, we have to lay down the groundwork for this list. First, official Disney movies only, so no Pixar or TV movies. Additionally, in order to qualify as an animal companion, they obviously have to be animals or animal-like creatures. Whether or not they can talk is irrelevant, but they must be able to fill the role of sidekick to their human masters. And yes, this means that we won't be counting any characters from animal-only or animal-dominant films. We also won't be counting any villain animal sidekicks since, while they do exist, the good ones far outnumber the bad, so it would be pointless to include them in a small category. With that out of the way, let's get into our ranking. As usual, we'll be starting with the least good sidekick on our list and working our way to the most pure and noble animal friend. Shocking no one with our pick for least good animal sidekick, we have Iago. If we were to look solely at his debut, Iago wouldn't even make the list, as he was exclusively Jafar's sidekick and was, therefore, a villain. However, the second film expands on his character development. Fed up with the years of disrespect and abuse, he abandons Jafar and tries to join Aladdin instead. This is entirely out of self-interest, as he wants a way back to his comfortable life in the palace. However, after being shown kindness and compassion, he starts to reform, betraying Jafar a second time and risking his life to destroy his former master and save his new friends. Still, after all this, Iago is more of an anti-hero, as his greed can get the better of him, often causing trouble for Al and his group. When push comes to shove, he's willing to protect his friends. So, we're still gonna say that Iago is a good bird overall. Next is Percy. Like Iago, this pampered pooch starts off as the pet of the villain, Governor Ratcliffe, and spends the first half of the movie as an antagonist. However, this doesn't last nearly as long as it did with Iago. After seeing Grandmother Willow for the first time, Percy changes his ways, and after being comforted by his former rival, Meeko, he then joins Pocahontas' group. Since then, he's become one of her closest friends, remaining with her in Virginia and doing what he can to please her. That being said, he has a love-hate relationship with Meeko, and the fighting between the two can cause problems. So that, coupled with his antagonistic origins, places this pug second to last on this list. The third least good animal on our list has to go to the Cheshire Cat. When it gets down to it, the best description of the Cheshire Cat would have to be chaotic neutral. Sometimes he's helpful, guiding Alice through Wonderland in a way that she can make sense of, and at other times he is harmful, provoking the Queen of Hearts into turning her wrath on Alice. Like with everything in Wonderland, there's no rhyme or reason as to why he does this, so we can neither give nor take away any points. We can't, in good faith, classify the Cheshire Cat as a villain, being just as mad as everything else in his world. So while he narrowly beats out the previous two, his unpredictable and volatile nature keeps him firmly near the bottom of the list. Alright, with the questionable characters out of the way, we move on next to Heihei. While not willfully harmful to Moana's quest, we have to place Heihei this low on our list, because he's useless. Not only does he come with Moana by mistake, but he's also incapable of taking care of himself, much less Moana. He appears to lack any intelligence, cognizance, or survival instinct, resulting in him inadvertently putting himself into comical amounts of danger that makes him more of a hindrance. He only does one thing to help her quest, saving the heart of Te Fiti from rolling into the sea during the climax of the movie, and even then, that was just a coincidence. Still, he's not malicious, and he cares for Moana as much as she does him, so we can at least place him outside our bottom three. Next, we have one of Disney's lesser-known pets, Hin Wen from the Black Cauldron. At the start of the movie, this pig serves as Tauren's pet who helps her master by showing him visions of the future. Because of this power, Hin Wen serves as a curly-tailed MacGuffin to the story, as the Horn King kidnaps her to make her show him where to find the Black Cauldron. As a result, Hin Wen actually has very little screen time to show her relationship to Tauren, meaning we have to keep her on the lower end of the list. From what we do see of her, it's clear that she cares for Tauren and vice versa. So at the very least, we can say that she is at least quite some pig. Next is Maximus. It was tough to place Maximus since he's close to both Rapunzel and Eugene, and depending on which one you look at, his ranking changes. If you look at his relationship with Rapunzel, you can see that they care deeply for each other and that he looks out for her safety. But if you look at Eugene, while they eventually settle their differences, their relationship starts off more antagonistic, with Maximus relentlessly pursuing him to apprehend what he believed to be a dangerous criminal. Overall, he has more involvement with Eugene than Rapunzel, but even then, we can't knock him that far down. He was doing what he thought was right at the time, and he changed his mind when he got to know Eugene, making him a very loyal horse in the end. Our next entry goes to the highly educated owl, Archimedes. As a companion to someone as eccentric as Merlin, it makes sense that Archimedes would be short with the wizard, and he isn't afraid to point out his many shortcomings. However, he is loyal to Merlin and helps Arthur in his lessons, provided that his sleep isn't interrupted. And even then, considering he is nocturnal, we can't knock him for his grouchy exterior, since he is being forced to operate outside of his normal cycle. While he can be rough around the edges, Archimedes proves himself to be a good companion to both Merlin and Arthur, so we can give him at least some credit. Now we have Mushu. Let's start with the bad stuff.
Mushu, awaken.
Mushu is a selfish individual, attempting to use Mulan in order to help increase his status with her ancestors. He forces her into dangerous situations for his personal gain, and is willing to sacrifice her happiness for his own. That being said, he owns up to his mistakes. He cares for Mulan and protects her, and makes her happy. And when he does hurt her, he makes things right, even at the cost of his safety and status. Overall, his good traits outweigh his bad ones, so we feel confident calling him a good dragon. But the negative is enough to keep him this low on our list. Next is Meeko. Like Mushu, Meeko is more selfish than most animal sidekicks, often thinking with his stomach rather than his head. Additionally, as we mentioned before, he has a rivalry with Percy, antagonizing him and trying to steal his food. However, like the others, he cares about Pocahontas and wants to help her. He takes a liking to John, partially due to Pocahontas being interested in him, and even makes up with his rival, Percy, when it looks like John is going to be executed for the death of Koku. While he is self-serving at times, we have to acknowledge that this trash panda is still one good guy. Just don't leave food out for him. Next, we have Scuttle. Like with Heihei, Scuttle ranks this low because he's ineffective. He touts himself as an expert on human paraphernalia, with Ariel coming to him for advice on the trinkets she salvages. Despite this, his explanations range from misleading to complete nonsense, resulting in Ariel's actual knowledge of human society being borderline non-existent. However, in the grand scheme of things, this is a minor flaw, and he makes up for it. He finds out that Vanessa was really Ursula in disguise, and fights her for Ariel's sake. He may be one of the more eccentric characters on this list, but at least he's willing to put his dinklehoppers where his mouth is. Next is Abu. Whereas his partner Aladdin only steals in order to survive, Abu is a talented and enthusiastic kleptomaniac. He steals anything that catches his interest, something which frequently lands him into trouble and frustrates Aladdin. However, Abu is far from irredeemable, as he has a big heart. He's among Owl's most loyal and loving companions, and puts up with a lot for his sake, such as when he was turned into an elephant in the hopes of winning over Jasmine and the Sultan. In the TV series, Abu is often the voice of reason when paired with Iago, showing his ability to grow and mature. He retains a few of his antagonistic traits, so we can't rank him any higher, but his soft heart and character growth is still something we can give him credit for. Next, we have Frankie, who's only the second smoothest jazz singer to be named Frank. As one of the frogs genetically enhanced by Franny, Frankie joins his amphibious entourage in performing for the Robinsons during the family's dinner. However, that's the beginning and end of Frankie's involvement with the family. The only other time he helps the Robinsons is when he takes care of the little Doris mob style by disposing it in the trunk of the frog's car. He did have a moment where he would have betrayed his family, though as he was being mind-controlled by the aforementioned little Doris at the time, we can't count that against him. Because of his lack of involvement with his family, we have to place him lower, but at least he helps them with their meatball-flinging entertainment needs. Next is Experiment 626, better known as Stitch. While Stitch pushes the definitions of animal and sidekick, he's close enough to warrant talking about him. As a genetic experiment created to destroy everything he touches, Stitch has a very aggressive and temperamental personality. However, after spending enough time with Lilo, he has the will and ability to defy his original programming. He channels his destructive tendencies for good, defending his Ohana and their island home from threats, such as Dr. Hamsterville and even his fellow experiments. He has the occasional temper tantrum when things do not go as planned, which prevents him from ranking any higher, but his good levels still outweigh his bad ones, so we have to rank him here. Next, we have the big old Papa Bear, Baloo. Baloo takes the first part of his species name very seriously, as he's laid back and prioritizes relaxation. He forms a bond with Mowgli, teaching him his philosophy on the bare necessities and wanting to spend time with him. This is both a blessing and a curse for Baloo's placement. On the one hand, he tries to keep Mowgli to himself, keeping him in the jungle where he would be in danger. But on the other hand, he also shows himself to have Mowgli's best interest at heart, risking his own life to fight Shere Khan to protect him. He also reneges on his desires to adopt Mowgli and takes him to the man village where he would grow up safely and happily. Because of his initial selfishness, we have to place him in the lower middle section of our list, but he's got plenty of good points. Next, we have Zero. While he is the nicest resident of Halloween Town, this is unfortunately a low bar to clear. By the very nature of Halloween existing to spread fear and terror, all of its inhabitants fall into a morally gray area by default. However, for the most part, they aren't malicious and can be good characters. And nowhere is that more apparent than with Zero. He's loyal to Jack and wants his master to be happy. He helps Jack with his Christmas scheme, despite his reservations, because it's what Jack wanted. And when it ended in failure, Zero steers him in the right direction by reminding Jack of his true purpose. He's a good boy, but the drag factor of the rest of his movie is what keeps him from ranking any higher. Next is Max. Being the only animal sidekick in his movie, not able to speak, his involvement in the story is small. He takes a liking to Ariel and is one of the biggest proponents of her and Eric getting together. He also recognizes Ariel when she's turned into a human, as well as seeing through Ursula's disguise and trying to keep Eric from falling for her tricks. What hurts his ranking is a small role he plays in the film, leaving him shy of the rest of our list. For what little he does, Max is a loyal companion to both Ariel and Eric. Next is Octavius Lollygagger, better known as Gus. Gus is the newest addition to Cinderella's mice friends, with his first appearance being rescued from a mousetrap by Cinderella. While his low intelligence and gluttonous appetite would be grounds for a lower spot, he's able to overcome these flaws. He's brave, albeit to the point of recklessness, and wants to do everything he can for Cinderella. He puts himself in danger to protect his friends and family, such as when he risked his life to keep the key to Cinderella's room away from Lucifer. He may not be the brightest bulb, but Gus proves that the only thing bigger than his stomach is his heart. Our last entry from Pocahontas goes to the hummingbird, Flit. Like with Meeko, Flit's priorities lie with keeping Pocahontas happy. Unlike Meeko, however, he doesn't have any of the self-serving tendencies to get in the way. He tries to get Pocahontas to marry Kocoum due to him believing that Kocoum will be able to take care of her the best. While he was initially distrusting of John, he comes around to John after he proves his worth by rescuing Powhatan from a gunshot, proving he's capable of changing his mind if he feels it's best for Pocahontas. But he has a stubborn streak, as this change of heart didn't come until the end of the first movie. However, everything he does for the benefit of Pocahontas, so we can't fault him too much. For our last dog, we have Bruno. Like most of the other dogs on our list, Bruno is loyal to Cinderella. He's also friendly, being close friends with all the other animals at the chateau. The one exception to this is Lucifer, whom Bruno has little patience due to his tormenting of Cinderella. This is both a blessing and a curse for his ranking, as while he does this to protect Cinderella, this puts him at odds with Lady Tremaine's house rules, indirectly putting both of them in danger of being kicked out. We can't blame him too much for not liking the villains, so we can still give him a spot this high. Next is Jolly. Setting aside the controversy surrounding sexual orientation, Jolly is still one of the more interesting characters in this movie. As one of the few beings who gives Esmeralda any form of love and respect initially, he takes his role as her protector seriously. He's feisty and belligerent, lashing out against those he perceives to be a threat to Esmeralda. This does include Phoebus at first, though considering how the other soldiers had treated them up to this point, we can't knock the goat too much. Overall, Jolly is loyal with a feisty streak, who earns a spot in the upper half of our list. Next is a cat who earns his stripes, Raja. Raja acts as a protector to Princess Jasmine, supporting her throughout the franchise. He's protective of her and her friends and keeps them in line when they don't cooperate, especially Iago, whom Raja will occasionally threaten to eat even after warming up to him. If we had to fault Raja for something, it would have to be that he is intolerant to anyone who annoys Jasmine even slightly, including Iago, Aladdin, and the Sultan. He eventually warms up to these characters, keeping him from dropping any further, though it does take him time to fully trust anyone. For as loyal and protective as he is, he earns his ranking this high up. Next is Tuk Tuk. There's no denying that Tuk Tuk is a loyal companion, assisting Ryan everything from combat to cross-country transport. We're placing him high since we have nothing major to fault him for, aside from a decreasing presence in the later half of the movie. However, even in the half where he's most active, Tuk Tuk doesn't offer much other than a few instances, such as disabling the trap on Raya's path to the Dragon Gem. Because of this, Tuk Tuk falls a little short, but we have to give him credit for not having any negative qualities to dock him. So it makes things awkward when we have to give the next spot to Turk. To get the negative out of the way, Turk is a stubborn gorilla with a rebellious streak. She lets her pride get in the way of helping Tarzan and often has to be convinced to put herself in danger. However, these are surface-level faults, and ultimately minor. Turk takes on a big sister relationship with Tarzan, as well as the other members of their family. She puts up with a lot for his sake as well, from breaking him out of the ship's brig to working with Tantor to create a diversion to keep Kerchak away from the nesting grounds. She may be proud, but it's clear that she's a protective big sister who cares for her family. So, we have to give her a higher ranking. Next, we have a little guy with a big heart, Jacques. From here on out, we don't have a lot to say on the negative side of these characters without grasping at straws, so we'll stick to the good points. Much like his buddy Gus, Jackson Checkers helps Cinderella. He acts as the leader of the mice, and he earns his position, being among the smartest and the quickest. He confronts Lucifer and is the only one brave enough to take him on alone. As the leader, he's also responsible for a lot of the group's efforts, from putting together Cinderella's ball gown to stealing the key to her room from Lady Tremaine. Just like the others, Jacques may be a little guy, but he's also got a big heart. This may be a surprise, but next is Morph. Like our bottom two, Morph starts out as a companion to the film's villain, John Silver. However, unlike those two, he doesn't take after his first master. While he may have a slight mischievous streak, he's friendly and helpful, taking a liking to Jim. In fact, he's so taken with Jim that when Silver reveals his true intentions, Morph is frightened by his master's behavior and stays with Jim instead. Fortunately, like Morph, Silver isn't as bad of a villain as he seems and allows him to stay with Jim instead, which is what earns Morph a spot on this list. From there, Morph is a companion to Jim, helping him and his mother reopen the Binbo Inn after their adventures. We're willing to overlook his past as a villain's sidekick, mainly because he never acted like one. So what we're left with is a friendly and helpful blob who deserves a spot here. Our next entry goes to Pascal. While he can't communicate with words, Pascal makes his intentions clear. He's a true companion to Rapunzel, cheering her up, rooting for her, and refusing to allow her to take steps backwards. As her only companion, Pascal's also protective, like during his first encounter with Eugene and Maximus, and during the struggle with Mother Gothel. He can also be affectionate to those he deems worthy enough, with him eventually showing sympathy and support for Eugene and his relationship with Rapunzel. He may not appear like much, but if this list has taught us anything, it's that big things often come in little packages. Next is Sebastian. Sebastian is a lot more complex than he lets on. When left to his own devices, he's carefree and fun-loving, especially when it comes to his beloved music. However, as the king's assistant, his job often requires him to be strict and no-nonsense. Nevertheless, his most striking traits are his loyalty and kindness, both to King Triton, whom he sees as his closest friend, and to Ariel, to whom he acts as a surrogate father figure. He puts the happiness of his friends over the law, as seen when he works to help Ariel find happiness with Eric rather than taking her back to the sea where he knows she'll be miserable. He can be a hard carapace at times, but Sebastian makes it clear that he loves his friends. Just outside the top 10, we find the original Black Panther, Bagheera. Level-headed and intelligent, Bagheera is one of the most down-to-earth residents of the jungle. While he can be frustrated by tomfoolery, he cares for Mowgli, going out of his way to ensure his safety. This puts him at odds with both Mowgli and Baloo, who both want Mowgli to remain in the jungle, but Bagheera only does this for Mowgli's sake. Plus, he was right once Shere Khan came into the equation, so we can't hold it against him. Nevertheless, Bagheera is a selfless and caring individual who makes it a crucial objective to protect those he cares about. Our next spot goes to Cricky. While he doesn't believe he's lucky, Cricky is eager to please. He acts as a straight man foil to Mushu, helping him with his schemes while also keeping Mushu on the right path. This results in him receiving the short end of the stick, either scolded by Mushu or physical injury. Despite this, Cricky doesn't mind and still values Mushu as a friend, so he puts up with a lot for his sake. He may not do much, but we have to give this lucky bug an A for effort and a spot within our top 10. Next is Sven. While he may be a reindeer on the outside, Sven is more of a Labrador on the inside, being loyal and playful for a beast his size. He's Kristoff's best friend, sleigh puller, and conscience, keeping him on the right path and following his heart. While he doesn't speak, outside of Kristoff's bad reindeer impressions, Sven makes his intentions clear through a combination of grunts, gestures, and his patented puppy dog face. There are times where he can be stubborn and childish, but when push comes to shove, he can be a hero. For that reason, we have to give this lovable reindeer a high ranking. Next is the bravest fish in the sea, Flounder. Loyal and protective seems to be the running theme with this list, but that's how it goes with animal sidekicks it seems. As Ariel's closest friend and confidant, Flounder follows her wherever she goes, keeping her safe and sticking up to those who chastise her. What places him this high is that he is Ariel's polar opposite, being timid, anxious, and adverse to adventure. You would think these would be negative traits, and they would be if they ended there. However, Flounder never lets his cowardice get in the way of pulling through when Ariel needs him. He follows her in all her adventures despite his distaste for the danger, and he throws himself into battle against Flotsam and Jetsam to protect Eric, and by extension, Ariel. For being a little fish in a big ocean, Flounder isn't afraid to swallow his fears in the face of rough waters, earning himself a spot this high. Next is Khan. While far from the focal point of the movie, Khan cares for Mulan. He's a no-nonsense horse, silently snarking at absurd events happening around him, such as when Mulan tried and failed at acting like a man. He has a specific distaste for Mushu, though that falls on Mushu for his various insults directed at him during their meeting. Ultimately, however, Khan is one of the most selfless and courageous animal companions in the entire Disney lineup, fearlessly following Mulan into battle to protect her. I mean, how many other pets would charge into an avalanche to save their master? The only thing keeping him from an even higher spot is a lack of attention from the film, but what we do see of him is enough to land him a spot this high. Now we have Pegasus. Like Khan, Pegasus is a loyal steed to Hercules, jumping into battle when he needs assistance. What places him above Khan is that, in addition to being Hercules' faithful mount, Pegasus is also his best friend, being extremely close to him and acting almost dog-like. This is a double-edged sword, as Pegasus is possessive whenever anyone else gets the attention of Hercules. This is done out of love for Herc, and he sets his feelings aside and changes them when the situation calls for it, so we can't fault him too much. It's also worth mentioning that Pegasus has been a part of Hercules' life when they were separated, as director Ron Clements has confirmed that he had been watching over him the whole time. While he lands outside the top 5, we have to acknowledge that Pegasus is definitely one of the better animal sidekicks out there. Up next, we have Louis, who is again the second best jazz musician with that name. Louis makes it this high for the same reasons as Flounder before him. He's a coward, despite his size and ferocious appearance, having multiple phobias and an unusually low tolerance for pain. Despite this, when push comes to shove, Louis will face his fears to protect his friends. He's even willing to give up his dreams of becoming a famous musician when his friends are in danger from Dr. Facilier's shadow demons, using his intimidating size to fight them off. He may be a coward, but he will have your back and put a smile on your face while he does so, earning him a high ranking. It's a similar case with Tantor. Tantor is a coward and a hypochondriac going through his days with extreme caution and hesitation.
Are you sure this water's sanitary?
However, when his friends are in danger, he always proves his loyalty by leaping into danger to help them. What keeps him above Louis is that Tantor is more proactive, often serving as the voice of reason while simultaneously pushing Tarzan and Turk to step up when danger approaches. While his bold and daring moments are the exception to his cowardly personality, we have to give this peaceful pachyderm a spot this high. The bronze medal goes to Gurgi. On paper, it's surprising to see how Gurgi got this high. Like our previous two, he's a coward, but unlike them, Gurgi usually lets his cowardice win over, keeping himself removed from danger in all but one instance.
Uh-oh, trouble.
Goodbye.
He values his friends, but his timidity and obnoxious personality rubs them the wrong way. Why are we giving Gurgi the bronze medal? Well, that one act of courage was so heroic that we have to give it special attention. When Tauren attempts to jump into the Black Cauldron to destroy its dark magic and kill the Horned King, Gurgi stops him and takes his place, sacrificing himself so that his friends can escape the castle alive. It's one thing to rush headfirst into battle, but it's a whole other level to give your life to protect those you care about. And while he is revived, the fact that he selflessly laid down his life without any expectation of a do-over is enough to make up for his earlier flaws. The silver medal goes to one of the flagship characters of the franchise, Jiminy Cricket. We're giving Jiminy the silver medal of good because, well, he kind of has to be good. As an official conscience, he is famously level-headed and wise, and able to lead Pinocchio down a righteous path. While he initially performed this role under duress, his pure and loving heart gave him the strength needed to grow and develop, in spite of his shortcomings.
Conscience is that still, small voice that people won't listen to.
Jiminy eventually came to view Pinocchio as his best friend, motivating him to remain by his side through the harshest of endeavors. Further appearances also show that he's also continued to grow with age and experience, becoming increasingly sage-like and devoted to his position. The only thing keeping him from the gold medal is his feisty and pessimistic personality in the earlier half of his debut, which did cost him some points in the long run. However, his character growth as well as the nature of his position is enough to earn him the number 2 spot on our list. The gold medal of good goes to Ray. We're placing Ray at the top because he takes the best attributes from Gurgi and Jiminy and merges them into one. Like Jiminy, Ray is a friendly and helpful companion to Tiana and Naveen, agreeing to help them without any expectation of a reward. He acts as a mentor figure to his friends, Tiana especially, proving himself to be intelligent and wise despite his eccentric demeanor. Additionally, he's also willing to sacrifice himself, fearlessly throwing himself into battle against an unbeatable foe to protect his friends. Unlike with Gurgi, no magic spell undoes this sacrifice, making Ray's death more impactful in the story. Yet despite this, he dies with no regrets, as he lives long enough to see Tiana and Naveen happy together in his last moments, and he gets his happy ending when he's reunited with Evangeline as the second star to the right. For his friendly personality, thoughtful advice, and fearless sacrifice, we can't think of any other character we can name as the gold medal of good of all Disney animal sidekicks. Alright y'all, that's the list. What do you think? Let us know if you agree. Be sure to hit that notification bell and binge our Good to Evil playlist, where we break down the morality of the characters and your favorite cartoons. But most importantly, stay wicked.